Well, hello, hello, hello. Welcome to my Zoom on this beautiful Sunday, sunny Sunday. All right, so here we are. And this is what we do. This is what we do. Do. I'm getting used to this. I'll have this all sorted out eventually. Technology is not that much smarter. All right. Strawberry fields forever. My juice bar has a seasonal juice. It's called Strawberry Fields. And so therefore I am enjoying some strawberry fields because it's strawberry season. All right. So let us do one other thing. My intention originally over this past week was to do the video with my implants and to basically unpackage them. And then I'll just state here now that the reason I decided not to do that is because it has been quite the energies lately. Like, I don't know, are you feeling it? Are you noticing that Pluto is bringing things up from the underworld and covering people's shit and putting it on for display and show? Ever since Aries season started, it has just dramatically revealed to me old lessons that have come up for revisiting. Because I want to believe the best in everyone. I want to see the best in everyone. And I have to be discerning. This is a lifelong lesson for myself. I know I'm not the only one. Hi, Mish. And yeah, the past 2 weeks, actually, now that we're into April, happy April. Spring has sprung. Everything is in bloom. Yeah. So as I share this, I want you to sit with your energy. And I think that there are still like what I will call remnants, dingleberries, danglers, leftover stuff from the past that maybe you're still shedding. Still like, energetically like, okay, I'm still trying to get some of this sloppy stuff off of me. Some of the woozy, wow, the schlep rock, the pig pen, because we've all had old patterns, old beliefs, old energies. And really spring, we need to do the spring cleaning to clear this stuff out. That's the message I've been getting. That over the past couple of weeks for myself, something came to my attention. I kind of sensed it. I kind of felt it. It's really unsettling to go, okay, here we go again. Someone trying to get one over on me. Someone trying to take advantage of my kindness, assuming that I am naive and ignorant and that I'm a woman. So, I'll submit and you can dominate and you can basically be a bully to me. And I'm not that kind of person. In fact, over this past year, I've been calling out shit left and right. Okay. Excuse my French, but I've had my share of people just trying to pull the wool over my eyes. I've had my share, and I'm not playing victim. I'm no longer allowing that energy into my space. I am not about the drama. Not that kind of drama. That's the drama trauma. These are people who actually get off on the stress response. They live in this space of creating problems where there are none existing. So, for example, if someone comes at you, really sit with it and don't react to it. See if it's true. Because if someone is coming at you, it could be them in their survival mode, coming from that space of trying to get their needs met. This may be a pattern for them. It may be a pattern for you. We all have work to do. We all have something to confront, because if we don't confront it, it will continue to confront us. The pattern will continue. The same lessons will appear, just with different characters, right? That's how the show goes on. we attract where we're at. And this is why I titled this, Be Mindful and Intentional with Your Energy. You are always emitting, and what you're emitting, you're magnetizing, attracting it back to you. Wow, right? Like, who would have thought? And so if you tend to play the victim, revisit your story. Do you want to keep telling that? I don't. If anything, I want to learn the lesson and go, see how I superseded, I overcame. I understand what's going on out here. That there are a lot of people, and I have compassion, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't make me a pushover. I can see where you think you can get away with something. And this is where power versus force comes in, where people will try to use their force, their fear, because that's where force comes from. Force comes from the space of, I'm afraid if I don't get my needs met, whatever, right? So power, it already exists within you. We all have power. But when we start trying to dominate, demand, deceive, take over another to get our needs met, that's force. And what happens when we try to force something upon someone is we actually force it on ourselves. We actually take ourselves out. When you think you're going to be able to get one over on another, you're actually doing it to you. And I've made a video about this. When you got one finger pointed out, you got three pointing back. Accusing someone of anything means you got something to work on from their past, your present, or your future. The idea that someone has to force their will upon another shows that they are coming from a fear response. They're coming from survival tactics, survival skills, what they learned when they were younger to get their needs met. They don't see that they have everything they need because they're in the stress response. They live in the hormones of stress, the cortisol. They get off on it, believe it or not, because it's an addictive pattern. When you get so caught up into the fight, you don't realize that your addiction is to that drama, to that story, to that stress, to the fight. And some of us have been there in the victim story, addicted to the story, because it only takes satisfying 3 of the basic human needs to constitute an addiction. It's consistent. It's a connection. It gets me attention. It's surprising. It catches me off guard. It's inconsistent. Like, believe it or not, some of the things we see as like a problem are us creating it. And so the reason I bring this up is because when we deceive another, we're really deceiving ourselves. It comes back at us. It's a boomerang. It's the boomerang effect. What you do unto another, you're doing and inflicting upon yourself, because the other is you. If you cannot see the other as God, see yourself in that other, I am that too, then you're missing, literally, that what we have all forgotten is that we are here to be our brother's keeper. That when I heal me, I heal you. When you heal you, you heal me. Energetically, it is this back and forth. Are you giving to get? Because that's force versus power. Are you giving because it's receptive and received? Like this fluidity, as opposed to resistance, like I'm only giving if I get, versus I'm giving because I know what it feels like to me when I give. I'm just using that as a generalization, but there's so much more that can be said, and it all depends on everybody's situation and where you're at, because where you're at is what you attract. And when the energies around you feel chaotic and overwhelming, it's time to take stock, reflect, recount what's really going on. And I briefly said it in the last video that I did, but essentially for me, a little over a week ago, I had this huge, had to revisit this, and my mom was the Phoenix. And to me, I felt like it was an initiation. It was an igniting of the Phoenix within me rising. And I dislike the whole victim story personally. I prefer to overcome, to thrive, to live at my best. And I know I'm a strong personality, but that doesn't mean I'm going out seeking conflict. What is interesting, and I have seen it throughout the course of my life, and I was sharing this with a good friend earlier, that, and I've also heard this, the more conflict often that you attract in your life, the stronger your purpose, the bigger your mission. And man, you know, sometimes that's a heavy weight to carry. And so when somebody comes at me and I didn't invite that energy, I just see their weakness, especially having been in the military where personalities and egos are huge, and they wouldn't be able to get away with the stuff they get away with behind those doors. That as a woman, it's easy for a man to, you know, try to dominate. I'm not trying to be a man. I'm not trying to dominate anyone. So why is it? And when did it really, where did it begin? Let's think about this. Where did it begin that there was a war waged upon the feminine, upon women? The fact that men are supposed to be the protectors and the providers and to take care of us, not to take advantage, overpower, dominate, as that makes them feel powerful, because that's a weakness. That's a weak man that does that. That's what I would call a beta fish flapping around, doesn't know how to stand in his true power, that he has to put someone else down in order to bring himself up. So with that said, hi, Valley. This has been a theme. And I know it's a legacy in my family because I saw it happening with my mom. She was a very strong personality. And she took on this masculine presence. I mean, she used to get on the phone and sometimes people thought she was a man because her voice was so deep and strong. And it's a sad thing that we live in a world where people feel so threatened by a woman who is in her personal power, that is strong as a presence, energetically or otherwise, even without saying anything. And I've had that happen where people come up to me and they just assume something about me and they have no clue. They don't know the struggles I've had. They don't know what it took to get to where I'm at. And none of us does about anybody. To assume that because she looks pretty, she's probably gotten preferential treatment. I'm going to call bullshit on that flag, because when I was in the Air Force, I actually had someone say to me that because I was pretty, I must have had preferential treatment. I said, excuse me, I've gotten quite the opposite. During my time in service, I was dinged. I was actually punished and penalized during my term because of that reverse discrimination. Oh, she's pretty, so she should be treated like shit because I assume that she's been treated, and it's so backwards. And what that is jealousy. That's coming from fear. And once again, I'm going to say that's somebody who imposes and forces their will upon another to uplift themselves. That's not a strong person. That's not even a leader. What that is someone who has a whole lot of work to do on themselves. And I've encountered it time and time again throughout the course of my life. Does it make me like bitter? No, I'd rather be better. And in fact, that was a common conversation I used to have with my mom. My mom used to say, you know, I never want to be like those bitter old ladies. But then there was a point she said, I now understand why they are bitter. And it's because you feel like you keep getting beaten down. Like people keep coming at you with the witch trials, you know, coming at you with the stakes, trying to burn you up. And it's like, the fuck is wrong with you? Like, can we actually have that conversation? Can we be honest about the fact that women are over and done with this. I mean, look at the state of our world when you're mocking us. Men can have wombs and have babies too. Come on, really? Get over it. It's all been by design to take us out, to justify perversions that are not healthy. They're toxic. Because if they were healthy, they'd come from a healed space that didn't need to force or impose itself upon the rest of us. Whenever you feel uneasy in yourself, that's a clue there's something untrue, because the body is always telling the truth. This is what I talk about, the embodiment. Feel it in your body, because it will reveal the truth, and it will also show you what needs to be healed. I could talk and tell so many stories about the stupid little petty things that I've had to deal with. The weak people in my past that thought they had to put a thumb on me and control me throughout the course of my career. You know, my last job, getting booted out and told I was the cause of hate and discontent, when in reality, I was a scapegoat for them not taking personal responsibility or being accountable for themselves and being unprofessional. I don't see that as, I was a bad person, or wow, they beat me and I'm done for. No, if anything, it just keeps teaching me how much stronger I am. And that people who are not natural born leaders try to take out the natural born leaders in order to try to justify and validate themselves. Because the weak person will try to dominate. And even in the S&M, the BDSM realm, I'm going to tell you right now, there is a healthy way about going about that stuff. So don't think of that stuff as being, there's so much that is twisted and turned. There's healthy ways of living, no matter what you're doing. But the world we're living in right now is trying to validate mental illness, trying to validate narcissism, sociopaths, psychopaths, protecting the bullies, the harassers, the stalkers, the abusers, the perverts, the ones who are preying upon others because they think it's okay, because they prey upon others because they've been preyed upon. And you know what's so funny is I heard this earlier by James True about how, think about the words. Every word has a dualistic meaning. Even if it's not spelled the same, you pray, right? Really, next time you pray, consider, what does that really mean? Are you preying upon, or are you praying? I mean, this is why the languaging, every time I turn around, woo! Hi, Melina, how you doing? Yeah, this is huge. This is a huge message for all women. And I know I'm not the only one going through this, because I literally a week ago from Friday had a whole, I'm telling you, it was an initiation and it was an igniting of the phoenix within me rising. And this isn't just me, so I know it's not. And I appreciate you sharing that. It just validates and reaffirms where we're at in the world right now. Stand in your power. Don't let people bully you. Call them out. It'll be scary at first if you're not used to it, because it takes the courage muscle. You got to exercise your courage muscles to actually call people out on their bullshit, especially when they're trying to pull one over on you, Oh, she won't know what's coming. Really? Really? I'm going to share what happened, because I want to get the story out, and I've been trying to get it off me, shake it off. Essentially, I hired somebody. I shouldn't have, but I was desperate. See, there's my clue. That's part of my lesson. Sometimes it's better to wait and keep looking and asking, or do whatever you got to do in a way that you can maybe. I've been trying to get a lot of work done on my home. I hired somebody. who boasted about how I do work on rich people's houses and they call me and, oh, I'd show you some pictures, but I can't see my pictures are all over the place and I need to organize them. Should have really but I will be honest, I paid attention to the way that the person was behaving. I watched their lack of communication via text. Wasn't as impressed with the work as I had hoped. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I paid in good faith, 2/3 of what we agreed upon. Whenever I would send a text, I'm like, could you let me know when you're coming back? Because I have to plan my day. Like, this is respect. This is what professional people do. I didn't say that part, but, and like he'd say, I'm coming on Tuesday and didn't, and like 3 days later, finally show up. And this happened for 2 weeks. And then he lost his phone. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then last week, not this past week, but the week before, finally shows up to do work. And I'm like, well, what else needs to be done? And I asked him to rearrange some things because I wasn't happy with the way it was done. He did some of it, but didn't do it all. And it was half-assed. Like, we're talking shitty, shoddy looking work. I'm not going to get specific about anything. And so I'm over here going, okay, I've paid, until the actual work is finished, there's no reason why I should be paying the remaining balance. I paid 2/3 of it in good faith. Never once said I wasn't going to pay. Obviously, I'm going to pay. I paid you, haven't I? I have, in good faith, shown my true character. So on the Friday of last week, when I had my full on, you got to be kidding me, something wasn't settling right. And I was very busy that afternoon. You know what? When I hire somebody, I let them do the work. I don't walk over and stand over their shoulder. I shouldn't have to do that. We're adults here. But every time I turned around and I noticed that this person would just be hemming and hawing, and I don't know how to explain it. Oh, they looked for work that needed to be done or was done incorrectly by my other person. And I'm like, I'll listen. I like suggestions. Yeah, handyman, not contractor, big difference. I like to hear people's suggestions. I'm open to hearing. But when someone is constantly cutting down someone else's work, that's also a clue. So yes, exactly. You pay when it's complete. So here's where it gets interesting. So I get a message that says, hey, do you have, one of those apps to pay? Could I get some more money from you? I'm like, well, what else needs to be done? He said, I'm almost done. It wasn't complete. I said, what else needs to be done? I'm trying to get him to be accountable. And also because I'm thinking, this person will tell me what needs to be. He wouldn't answer my question. What else needs to be done? He was so fixated on the money. I said, well, I prefer to pay in cash. And I left it at that. And then I started to get really heated because I was like, something doesn't feel right. Something feels off. And then I started reflecting and I had to talk it out with somebody. I said, you know what? I feel like something's not right. Like he's trying to pull one over on me. I don't know how to explain it. And sure enough, I went back and I looked at the original text when he gave me the quote. Now, when I asked for the estimate on this work, it was a start to finish. I have a whole situation back there that he's aware of. He's seen what needs to be done. Why would you give me a partial phase of work estimate other than you knew from the start you were going to set me up? And from the start, when he first came by, and it stood out, but I didn't really connect the dots until this happened. I get this when he came by to look at the work, and I was asking him for, his suggestions and what he could do and what I could hire him to do. What could he offer and what was the price, right? So he says to me, because he bought 2 windows off of me off Facebook. This is how the encounter all really started. He said to me, when I first met you, I thought to myself, this is a nice lady. She's going to get taken advantage of. There's a reason that stood out to me. And I wrote it down on my notebook going, yeah, that was the setup. What they do is they tell on themselves. And this is a total narcissistic situation. I could see it in all the, those of you who followed me long enough, what I've been through. So you think I'm hyper aware? Because I see it now, see it more clearly than anything before. you can't hide the shit. And it's Pluto underworld. Pluto is revealing the shit. People can no longer hide it. And you might mess with the wrong person who's going to reveal it and bring it out of you. You might not like it either, because if you continue down that path, this is a karmic lesson. You keep doing the same thing over and over again, thinking you're just going to get away with it. Eventually, that shit will catch up with you. That's what karma truly is. It's your behavior. It's your patterns, whether or not you learn to clean those up. So it dawned on me to look back through the texts, and I talked it out with my friend, and I said, motherfucker, excuse my French. That's exactly how I was feeling. This guy's actually taken advantage of my kindness. And he actually set me up because his languaging was what I didn't understand. I said, he's getting me on the languaging. See, he's going to use that against me later on. You watch. He'll show his true colors. I said, he set me up because he knew full well he was going to take advantage of the situation. He was going to take advantage of my kindness and my ignorance about the languaging. So here's what transpired. On the Saturday, he was going to stop by and get some money. Didn't ever once mention about finishing the work or finishing the job. Not once. I said, unfortunately, I'm busy. I'm helping my dad. I have full plate on this weekend. Can we pick it up again on Monday? And I'm sharing this as a lesson for all of you ladies out there. You do not need to let people bully you either, because as this goes along, it gets better. And I figured, you know what? I don't want to deal with this weekend. I'm already heated about it. And I don't really I'm not going to reveal what I'm aware of. You know, this came out full force. I'm like, oh, if anything, I said to my friend, I said, he'll reveal himself. Because at no point have I ever said I wasn't going to pay. And I'm totally open to paying, but he needs to finish the work. We had that conversation. He hadn't finished certain things that were key. I'm not going to get into details because I don't want to, you know what I mean? Long story short, Monday rolls around. I get a message that says, are you going to be around a little bit? Because he was going to stop by once again. This is so disrespectful and inconsiderate that you're willing to stop by to pick up money that you think you're owed, but you haven't even said anything about finishing the work. Like, so he says, are you going to be around in a bit? Like, I got nothing better to do but to be at his disposal when in the past 2 weeks prior, every time I'd be like, when are you coming by? Oh, I'll be there Tuesday. And it didn't turn into till Friday. And then there was a whole incident where he lost his phone too. And he told me the story of how he accused these kids, these teenagers that were at this house he was doing work at. And then it turned out he realized he dropped the phone in the dirt where he was, doing whatever he was doing. But I really wonder if he was man enough to apologize to the kids and the parents of the kids that he was doing the work for, or if he just proceeded to attack and accuse, because that's the behavior that I witnessed. Because I was like, oh, okay, I'm seeing a pattern here. But all of that kind of connected dots for me. Monday rolls around. I said, I'm sorry, I had to run off to help my dad. And then he proceeds to go into his victim story. I'm just a single, this is my job, and, I need to get paid, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And he starts going down that passive aggressive, attacking me, accusing me, saying that the work is done. And I'm like, wait a minute here. Where's this coming from? You have, the work's not complete. I'm like, okay. And sure enough, all of it came out, and he revealed his true colors. He revealed the fact that he was good. He did. He brought back that text, screenshotted it, and sent it to me. But see, the problem is that he was very consistently inconsistent in his text messages. And that's what's funny, is people don't understand when their stuff is right there. Like, I'm like, well, wait a minute, what else there's other work that hadn't been finished. And I started mentioning things like, and he proceeded to say, well, I only quoted you for this. I'm like, well, you still haven't completed even that. And every time I'd say, you haven't finished the work. Oh, well, I need to get paid, period. Like completely glossing over and keeping me in this narcissistic loop of how he's playing the victim of not getting paid for work that's unfinished. And it just went on and on and on. And I just was like, and I actually called it out. I said, wow, I see what you did there. You took advantage of my kindness and my ignorance of the languaging. So you knew all along. It sounds like you don't even want to finish the work. And then he pulls the narcissistic, well, it sounds like you don't even want to pay me. I said, I never said I would never pay you, but you can't demand money from me for unfinished work. Isn't it interesting? And this is the kind of thing that I see is clearly a pattern because he worked himself up. But at this point, I don't even want this person on my property because he's shown that he's unprofessional, he's untrustworthy, he's accusatory, right? Like I don't trust him. Why would I trust him to go back there and do some work now at this point? Because he's already proven that he set me up. He's already proven that he's all about the money. So he might sabotage me. And I don't even know if the work was done properly at this point anyway. So this gets really, really, really good. He basically, and it was very attacking. He called me petty for mentioning a couple things. And I was only pointing out the work. When he said I was being petty, it was specifically about one of the jobs that he needed to finish and how he hadn't put something back where it was. And it's interesting how I know they think we're ignorant. They think we're idiots that, oh, I'm a good, please abuse me. Right. Well, again, this is one of those things where they try to dominate because they're weak. Their weakness is shown in their behavior. When they become abusive with their language, accusing and demanding of something they don't deserve. Like I'm like over here going, you're demanding money for unfinished work. I kept bringing it back to that. I'm like, I'm sorry. I didn't say I'm sorry. I'm like, and I kept it very above board and very neutral the whole time. At one point I did say though, I said, when you want to come off your high horse and you want to discuss this rationally, let me know. But you haven't finished the work. And not once was he saying, well, I can come by such and such a day. Okay, maybe I do need to come. Not once did he even offer to come and work. He was so fixated on getting paid. He doesn't have any focus on doing the work, which is why I said, it sounds like you don't want to do the work. Let me see. He sent me another message on the Wednesday because I dropped it. I'm like, I can't let this person keep looping me in. And I don't want this to continue because it's not my story. It's not my drama. He's making something out of nothing, which never existed if he would have just done the work. And I pointed that out too. So he did send me something about claiming he would, this is where he got dirty, claiming he would report me. First off, I do want to say he's not licensed. And despite what kind of work is being done, I'm like, there you go, getting dirty on me. You're going to report me. You're going to take me to small claims. Those are the two things he accused. He put out there. It's like, I see, yep, this is his true colors. He's a bully. He's being a bully and he's trying to get his way and he's pissed because I won't give in. So I woke up to another message today. I think the last message he sent me was on Friday that said, okay, you don't seem to think that I owe you any more money. And that as a result of me not trying to give him any money, he's going to take me to small claims and report me to the city. I'm like, wow, look at you playing dirty. I didn't say that, but that's me thinking. I'm like, wow, he thinks he can bully me. I'm like, well, I remind you to go back through and read our text message thread because everything they need is right there. Like, oh, you think you know it all. Like, this is what I mean when I say narcissistic. I mean, throwing it around, twisting it and being accusatory and name calling. Like, I'm like, I don't play these games. Cause he would say, I don't play these games. I'm like, games, it was never a game to me. I hired you to do a job. And if anything, he says, good luck. And I said, I just want the job done. I didn't invite this energy. And yeah, that was a no contract, right? So here's what ended up transpiring. I didn't, I responded to it. I just said, do whatever you got to do. I just want to get the work done, and good luck, whatever. And he sent me another message this morning, continuing on with his, just so you don't feel blindsided. Blindsided. Once again, revealing himself. Is like what he said, this is a nice lady. I'd hate to, she's going to get taken advantage of. Not, I'd hate to see her get taken advantage of. She's going to get taken advantage of. Hence his premeditation in that. You got to pay attention to what people say, because they out themselves. And I reminded myself, you held on to that stuck out in your mind for a reason. That stuck out in my mind for a reason. And yeah, they think that it's not accountable. And my one girlfriend's like, oh, it's probably better to just pay him. I'm like, what is wrong with us women that we think that it's okay and it's easier to pay them because you're afraid of what's going to transpire if they turn around and try to come after you? I mean, don't get me wrong. I have to admit I had been concerned if he'd show up at my house. But a pacifist, a passive aggressive, and in the whole narcissistic realm, they don't like confrontation, so they try to do it from afar. And not all of them are the same. Depends on how depends on if they know how to play the game with the, he didn't expect to encounter me this way. I think he really thought that I was a pushover. I think he forgot that I was a veteran too, by the way, which I said, this is really messed up. Is that how you targeting a disabled veteran here too, on top of everything? So anyway, the way I see it, despite all his threats, I would have been more concerned had he shown up at my home. And the reason I say that, I have neighbors that watch my home, so I feel safe in that respect. I still feel like I need to put up signs and cameras just to cover myself because of this kind of thing. And because of what I went through with the veterinarian. Like, she made me more uncomfortable than this person, the way she was so attacking in her, situation there. But the thing is because of the behavior he showed me prior, he is calculatable. He is not reliable. How about that one? That his inability to commit and follow through is part of his own destruction. See, when people try to deceive another, they're the ones deceiving themselves. And that's what I wanted to also point out. So what ended up transpiring, yeah. What ended up transpiring regarding this, this whole scenario of what transpired when he was working here for 3 weeks, it was, I'll be there Tuesday. Oh, I'm finishing up this, and that not showing up. That in itself tells me there's a pattern of an inability to follow through and finish what he started. So I'm grateful that I witnessed all of that to not be so afraid of the situation. And because, yeah, there are some crazy people out there. And when they're vindictive, they'll do some crazy shit. And this is for a matter of $500 that he feels entitled to, that he still wants for unfinished business. But I essentially told him, my response to him earlier, because I essentially said, this is because he kept saying having a money issue. I said, there's no money issue. You haven't completed the work. I fired him. I said, I'm firing you for breaking our agreement. So stop harassing me. Because that's essentially how I feel. And it's his word that will become the downfall because he doesn't follow through on his commitments. And people do that. They forget. They forget how to follow through, how to be accountable and personally responsible for what they say versus what they do. So in a lot of ways, this taught me a lot to remind me to trust my gut, and also when something stands out, there's a reason. And And it just brought out the fire in me, like, no, I'm not taking this lying down anymore. And my girlfriend was really upset because she was like, well, what if this and what if that? And it could backfire. I'm like, on who? On who? In the end, when it comes down to it, he's harassing me. He's bullying me. He's making attempts to try to demand money for something that he does not deserve. That we had an agreement that he renegotiated, he reneged on, that he backed out of by not completing. So as far as I'm concerned, and I'm the one who hired him, he's fired. He's fired for incomplete work. I'm not paying for somebody who just wants a handout for something that hasn't been done. And it's really sad that I should even have to say that, because people who know me, I'm not to withhold anything from anybody when it's due. I'm more than generous. I even give bonuses to people when they work for me. Like, you get a bonus. But this guy's bonus, all I can say is this. The next time you think you think a woman she's a nice lady, she's going to get taken advantage of, you better hope it's not by you. Because if that's your intention, that shit is boomerang back to you. That's the spell he cast on himself. That this is not mine. This is his shit. He can have that energy back, because that's how the universe protects us. We allow the energy to go back where it originated. We do not absorb that. We do not allow that. Thank you for reminding me that there are people out there that I have to be aware of, that I have to be, unfortunately, on my guard, that I have to be discerning with. It's really sad. And my girlfriend and I had this conversation, like, why do we still have these situations? What is the situation that I, as a woman, can't trust a man to be protective, to take care of and do the right thing, because they're always looking to get something in return? Those people show themselves so blatantly clear. And it's disgusting. And it's not right. It's not right. You're going to take me to small claims court? They're going to throw it out. You know why? Because they're going to look at it and go, well, wait a minute, you didn't complete the work. Why are you demanding money for something that's not even done, that you didn't follow through? They're going to look at him and be like, what? And then the same thing. And you got 2/3 of it. Yeah, he got paid. He just didn't finish what he started, and then expected something as a result of that. It's a con artist for sure. And he proceeded to tell me he consulted counsel. And I, at that point, had told him to stop contacting me. And I thought to myself, yeah, if you really consulted with a lawyer, counsel doesn't mean it's a lawyer, by the way, either. That's, you got to pay attention to people's languaging. If he did really actually speak to somebody, anybody, lawyer or otherwise, they'd be like, dude, I don't know. I'd reconsider. She might be calling your bluff. The only thing that I was saying earlier is, now that he's dug himself so deep into this with his bluffing and his bullying tactics. The question is, how far is he going to push it? I know he can call he can call the city and he can complain, he can file whatever, he can make a report and try to get me in trouble, because that might be what he decides to do. But see, the city, you got to give your name, your address, and your phone number. So if somebody shows up at my door, okay, so what do I do with that? It's my home. I don't have to defend myself or justify anything. You know, this is the other thing that we tend to forget in this world. I don't have to let someone in my house to prove something that somebody is making a claim against. I'll tell you right now, I will tell the person, whoever shows up, exactly what I'm saying here. This individual is harassing me for something that and here's the other thing about police reports. And I've actually had to, and for my own safety and my own security, I've had stalkers. I have letters showing, back when you know who was in the picture, they were sending letters to the yoga studio. They sent a letter to my house. When I got a letter at my house, that's when I called the cops and I submitted a police report. I submitted it to cover myself, because I said, ultimately, they know where I live. I don't even know who this person is, because they don't put a return address. So they get to hide anonymously. And those are the weak people. Weak people don't show themselves. They hide behind the keyboards, hide behind the phone, hide behind not even revealing themselves while revealing themselves. So when I just did that, I filed a report. I said, listen, just to cover myself, because honestly, I don't know what they're capable of. I don't even know who they are. They have my address, but I don't know who they are to begin with. And I couldn't get them to do any type of like fingerprinting or anything like that, which would have been nice. You know, unless someone shows up at your house, you really can't do anything. But I told them, I said, I'm just doing this to cover myself, so that at least if someone does show up, I had already had it submitted. This was years ago. I think it was in 2018 is what probably when I submitted that. And then as far as this situation goes, I told my girlfriend, about filing a police, it's a harassment. She's like, you better look that up. It's not technically harassment. And unless, and I know all about that. But, sometimes putting it in the system also shows that, there's a pattern. Like I'd rather have, just like when I worked for the government, a lot of times, if you don't document bad behavior in a work environment, you have no grounds to fire anyone. So unless you keep an actual documentation of bad behavior or, unprofessionalism in the workplace, you can't just fire them. You have to have some sort of actual history of their performance, as they say. And so I remember that when I was in the government, I was like, and everybody's afraid to get anybody in trouble. When it comes down to someone's actual safety and you don't know what someone's capable of, you should be able to report. You should be able to speak up. You shouldn't feel that you're, oh, I'm afraid. Like my girlfriend saying, oh, you should just pay him the money. I'm like, why? Why? Because so that another person can get one over, can bully somebody into doing something against their will, and also enabling them in that behavior. That's just keeping the pattern going. So yeah, let him try, but he'll give up as long as you stand your ground. Threatened him with a cease and desist order. Yeah. Well, I just put it in a restraining order. Yeah, trust me, I thought about that. But again, you need some proof. The person has to show up, has to do something stupid. You have to have it all documented. I know that. And this is the crazy, fucked up world we live in. Because how many women out there get abused, report, and nothing happens to the men? How many women have been raped and then have to go to court and still watch their perpetrators just get it thrown out or what have you? This is what is so messed up around the world right now. And as women, how they just continue. It's like war was waged against us a long time ago, saying that we're equal. The whole women's movement is bullshit. It was all about getting women out of the house so that, there were more money, income tax. That's why do you think the cost of living has gone up the way it has? I don't yet, but I will. Far too many injustices against the feminine, period. And it's mostly because of unhealthy, toxic men. And also women too. And I'm going to only say this because we ourselves have been conditioned to not trust other women based on our system. And tell me that's not fucked up. I love my women. I love my men because I know we have healthy on both spectrums. But I also recognize that, unfortunately, we're living in a society and a culture these days, cults of personalities, to where people act from the places within them that are unhealed, from fear, from the FOMO, fear of missing out, fear of not getting your needs met, fear that there's not enough for me when there's plenty. The idea that I have to fight to get my dues. How many of you have heard that one growing up? Nothing comes without hard work. Think about the languaging and the spells that we cast. There was something I was listening to earlier about how many people don't realize how we cast our spells and wonder why our lives are lived unwell. There was something specific I heard earlier that I was thinking about, how we take things for granted. Oh, here's another example. So let's just say, for example, with relationships, one of my girlfriends, she inspires this one right now. One of my girlfriends, she's in a relationship and she was so happy. I mean, she's had it tough too. And she was saying basically how she doesn't want to be crazy in love. She wants to be calm, settled, and supported. Think about that one. So many people, so many of us, the way we've been indoctrinated and programmed via the movies, the television, the advertising, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, I'm crazy in love. Crazy as in bad mental health. Think about the spell casting in that. I don't want to be crazy in love either. I want to be calm, cool, collective. I want to feel secure, safe, loved, and protected. That is the reality. Yeah. We are in Florida. We're gun control, I have my what do you call it? Weapons stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, all of that stuff is important to be aware of, but I'm also not here to draw it upon myself. And so that was another thing with my one girlfriend who, on the one hand, I said to her the other day, I really do appreciate you caring, because obviously you got upset because you care. And because between the two of us, we've been having these constant conversations around why is it that we should have to fight for men to acknowledge that there needs to be receptivity. Why should I have to be on the defense? Why should I have to worry about a man trying to take advantage of me, whether it is in the professional hiring of them, or the just wanting sex from us, the dominance thing, the whole, I want to own you, this claiming thing. And I don't mean it in a healthy way. I mean the toxicity of it. And we need to acknowledge that in ourselves. Now, yes, there's the husbanding of ourselves and being safe, but there's a certain level that right now where we're at in the world, this Pluto underground, all this stuff, and it's Saturn too, teaching us to acknowledge where you have been maybe just glossing over, maybe just dismissing and not acknowledging what you feel and what is real and what you sense and what may be nonsense. It really is about us being accountable too. So that's what I'm also sharing here, is this balance, this duality, this polarity that we're dealing with right now. That in order for us to rise, and I mean rise in a healthy way in humanity overall, man, woman, child, all of us, to balance out the polarities, to make them work in this dance, this fluidity. The fact of the matter is we're imbalanced. We only see all the crap because of the imbalance in ourselves and everything else. What we see outside of ourselves is really what is not working within us. If you're triggered by the external world, it's because of something in you unhealed. I know this because of my own stuff. I know because I teach from a personal experience level. I only know what I have experienced. I'm not going to try to foo-foo over, I read it in a book and the book said this. No, it's called integrating. The wisdom comes from the integration of the awareness and the lessons and the blessings of your life. Thank you. Relationships of any type should be win-win, not win-lose. I so agree. Thank you, Hugh. I appreciate you saying that. Because where we're at is we want receptivity. We all want love. Why do we withhold it? Why are we afraid of giving it? Why are we afraid of receiving it? I know for myself, some of the stuff that has happened. My girlfriend was a little upset. She goes, well, why didn't so-and-so speak up for you? Why didn't they vet the individual? I said, you know what? Maybe I didn't also allow that. I have to own that. So I allowed someone into my space because I was desperate to get work done. And I didn't allow a masculine to speak up or to notice what I might not have been noticing at the time. So it's like this balancing act of noticing where you fell off and the other one tried to pick up and take one over on you. But when you recognize it, again, when you know better, you can do better. Maya Angelou. It's the truth is we're all navigating these waters, and there's some turbulent waters. We are in Aries fire season right now. Don't get me wrong. People are getting burned and people are burning. But this is a lot of water energy too, ironically. I literally put on one of my bracelets the other day and it exploded and I had to bring it in to get repaired. And it was a Kuala Awala, which is dolphin water energy. And I knew clearing that stuff, because that's how my life works. That is how things in my life unfold. If it's not an accidental, like little fire, mini fire, or breaking glass or my bracelets, I'm telling you, that's how the universe speaks to me when I clear energy, as well as yawning. And there's a whole other slew of things. Yeah. You know what, though? We're all strong. What I was sharing was sometimes, and I know I've got a big vision, I got a big purpose, and it's not to diminish anyone else's. I just know that this has always been the universe just preparing me. Like I said to my friend this morning, so what's really sad is these weak people think they can prey upon people, and then they choose the wrong one to prey upon. And that part of my life lesson is to basically build that courage and that resilience and the awareness. It's not that it will or it won't ever stop. It's that it's not personal, but those people make it personal. That is the one lesson in my life I have learned. People make shit personal, especially when it's not. All the craziness you're seeing out in the world isn't even personal, but people and groups are making it personal. People, news media are actually pointing fingers and trying to lure you in hook, line, and sinker to make you feel emotionally charged, so you make it personal. Remember when I talk about the 5 senses is how you take in data. They can penetrate your senses. They will penetrate into the very nuances of your insecurities. And they prey upon that. They prey upon that. Think about it. Yes, you start listening. The more you listen, the more you hear. And then it becomes super clear, right? And I say listening with your heart, listening with your body, because your body, again, like I said earlier, it is the truth teller. It's always telling you what you need to know. Because what you feel is real, and it will reveal the truth of the matter, the truth of what you may need to work on to heal. The triggers are just tests to bring to the surface the unresolved trauma. Oh, I love that eagle landing on your shoulder. Woo, that's a powerful totem. Look that up. Yes, and the media is all about targeting those emotions because they need you to feed them with your fears. Most of the stuff you see when you turn on social media, the news, or whatever it is there to bring you down into the low vibrations. Loki is the god of war, and think about that. Low key, bring you down into the lower vibrations. Plays upon your first 3 chakras, your root, your security, your sexuality, your sensitivity, your ability to create, your ability to procreate, to be contributing of the world. And if you don't feel safe, then why would you want to do any of that? So the longer you stay in those lower chakras, how can you actually express and fully be embodied? We have to be all inclusive. It's all relevant. Where we're at in the world today, wow. Wow. I still think these are great times. It's a powerful time. And yeah, it zapped me a little bit this past week because I'm like, I can't believe I'm going through this shit again. And essentially when this erupted, when I started to see it for what it was on the previous Friday, I was like, this reminds me of something. When I first bought this house, I hired someone to help me redo my bathroom, to take out the window that was there and to help make it bigger so I could put in the glass blocks that are in there now. And this person I found on Facebook, and they said that they acted like they were doing me a favor. I was paying $25 an hour back then, and that was in 2015. That was a lot of freaking money. And he made it sound like that wasn't that much money, that he was giving me a deal. Once again, he was preying upon me, and I didn't know it at the time. And then I was wearing my turban a lot because I was actually teaching a lot of Kundalini yoga at that time, and I felt protected. Like I felt like I needed that. And at the same time, I also had a woman doing a feng shui clearing on my property in my home. So the weekend comes and he's working, and he leaves halfway through the day, and I'm confused about why. And he comes back and he smells like alcohol. I'm like, this is really weird. And he proceeded to kind of be very abusive with his language. And he's like, well, I don't know what's going on up under that turban of yours. I'm like, where's this coming from? I didn't invite this energy. Not only that, but he was always trying to flirt with me and act like, he wanted to see what kind of food I liked, as if he wanted to, like, he was trying to poke into he wanted something more kind of arena. This guy that I'm talking about that's happening now very much reminded me of this. The addictive behavior, the addiction. There's an addiction in there. Not 100% sure what it is, but this other individual made me feel so uncomfortable. He literally wanted his money so bad. And this guy acted like he had lots of money too. And he followed me to the ATM that night. So he made sure he got paid that day. So I paid him. And as a result, I felt so uncomfortable. I finally just sent a text message saying, you know what, don't come back tomorrow. So that was the last one. That was in 2015. So when this came back up, I'm like, you know what, this is reminding me of that guy. And I don't even remember his name, and I don't care. It reminded me so much of that guy again that I had to sit with it going, this guy that I'm dealing with now has an addiction. I don't know what it is. It's not obvious, but I guarantee he's got something going on. And sure enough, last week, as I went outside and I was working with my friend, I found a crushed beer can. In my backyard. I was like, apparently it must be drinking, because that's one thing. And it could be more than that. But that was enough for me to go, okay, now I know this isn't my friend's, and I know it's not mine because I don't drink. So the individual is drinking on the job too. That's enough for me. Yeah. So that was the first initial sense I had, was this guy's so fixated on the money. There's an addiction there. He acted like he was making all this money and working for these rich people, which first off was such a turnoff, hearing that languaging and speaking about people rich as if that's, making him better. I just found it so disgusting and disrespectful. When people talk about this versus that and groups and things like that, it's a turnoff to me. It's like saying me versus them, and like acting like he's better than them too. That was the other thing, right? He thinks he can talk himself up because he doesn't have that in him. He's so weak, he has to put others down to bring himself up. How disgusting. So yeah, the beer can. I forgot to mention that. Yeah. I didn't even mention it in the text. I was like, it's not worth my time. I'm not bringing that up anyway. Besides, I'm not getting petty. I'm just keeping it simple. And the less is more. Always keep your conversations, especially versus text, factual, relevant. Don't bring other stuff into it. Because there was at one point he proceeded to make a comment in there, goes, well, now I can see why people don't come back to do work for you, which isn't true. That's not a true statement. I didn't even defend it. I'm like, where's he pulling that stuff out? Yeah. So I think we need to be teaching a little bit of power versus force these days. Yeah. I'll tell you what, it's a blessing and a curse sometimes to be able to see what I see and connect the dots the way I do. And I say that only because it's challenging to get others to see what I see and to understand what I know. I got into a little bit of a spat with my girlfriend the other day because on the one hand, it felt like she was in her fear space and projecting her stuff onto me about what she was afraid that would happen to me. And then at one point I realized, you know what, this is because she's upset that she sees me getting taken advantage of, even though I'm aware of it. And it made her mad that that even happened to me. So there was a point the other day that I sent her a message. I said, I just want you to know I appreciate you. I see where your concern is coming from. I know it's genuine and I appreciate that. And I love you. So you have to also understand that sometimes people will technically try to rationalize their fear that they project at you. And it's not personal, but they make it personal. Like I see where she was seeing something of herself and me that made her upset, and she made it personal. And so then started projecting things that were not necessarily true, or, she has some valid concerns regarding things, but at the same time, I'm over here going, I don't invite that energy, so I don't see it as a concern. Is it possible? Maybe. But if I ruminate on it and I fixate on it, then I'm going to draw it to me, aren't I? I trust in my manifestation ability. So I'm just going to read a little bit from Power versus Force because I think that would be very relevant right now. The skillful are not obvious. They appear to be simple-minded. Those who know this know the patterns of the absolute. To know the patterns is the subtle power. The subtle power moves all things and has no name. That is, as you start opening up this book. This is a very, very, very powerful book. I read this back in 2009. A girlfriend recommended it to me. There are 394 pages in this particular version of it. When I first read this, it was a blue book, and I got it from the library. This, the original foreword. Imagine, what if you had access to a simple yes or no answer to any question you wished to ask? A demonstrably true answer. Any question phrased as a statement. Think about it. There's the obvious, Jane is seeing another guy. Johnny is telling the truth about school. But it's only a short step to, this is a safe investment. This career is worthy of my pursuit. What if everyone had such access? Staggering implications suggest themselves immediately. Think again. What would happen to our ponderous and all too often flawed judicial system if there were a clear, confirmable answer to the proposition, John Doe, is guilty as charged? What would happen to politics if we know, as we know, if all of us, okay, let me say that again. What would happen to politics as we know if all of us could ask the question, candidate X honestly intends to fulfill this candidate promise, yes or no? And all of us got the same answer. How about that one? And what would happen to advertising, period? You get the idea, but the idea gets bigger fast. What happens to nationalism? Nation X is, in fact, dedicated to the overthrow of democracy. To government, example, this bill does, in fact, protect the rights of citizens, yes or no? What happens to the check is in the mail? If, as has been said, man learned to lie an hour after he learned to talk, then a phenomenon such as the one we're discussing would be the genesis of the most fundamental change in human knowledge since the beginning of society. The transformations it would wreak in fields from communications to ethics in our most basic concepts in every day of daily existence would be so profound that it is difficult to even conceive what life would be like in a subsequent new era of truth. The word the world as we know it would be irrevocably changed right down to its very roots. This is power versus force. Love you, Valley. I will see you in the next one. Kinesiology. So this book really highlighted the whole kinesiology movement, because you test your body. Your body tells the truth. That's what kinesiology is based on. Is you can use a pendulum, and it's an extension of your body. You can use the finger thing, where basically you take your finger and you ask a question. Does this person have does this person deserve the money? Guess not. Like, how strong is the yes and the no? The no would be it's weak, right? Things like that. So kinesiology, the study of muscles and their movements, especially as applied to physical conditioning. Kinesis, movement, kinine, to move-ology. The study of kinesiology first received scientific attention in the second half of the last century through the work of Dr. George Goodhart, who pioneered the specialty he called applied kinesiology, after finding that benign physical stimuli, for instance, beneficial nutritional supplements, would increase the strength of certain indicator muscles, whereas inimical stimuli would cause those muscles to suddenly weaken. The implication was that at a level far below conceptual consciousness, the body knew, and through muscle testing was able to signal what was good and bad for it. The classic example cited later in this work is a universally observed weakening of indicator muscles in the presence of a chemical sweetener. The same muscles strengthen in the presence of a healthful natural supplement. In the late 1970s, Dr. John Diamond refined this specialty into a new discipline he called behavioral kinesiology. Dr. Diamond's startling discovery was that indicator muscles would strengthen or weaken in the presence of positive or negative emotional and intellectual stimuli, as well as physical stimuli. A smile would make you test strong, while the statement, "I hate you," will make you test weak. Before we go any further, let us explain in detail exactly how one tests, especially as the reader will certainly wish to try him on himself. Here is Dr. Diamond's outlet from his 1979 book, Your Body Doesn't Lie, of the procedure adapted by him from the classic description in H.O. Kendall's Muscles, Testing and Function from 1971. It takes two people to perform a kinesiological test. Now, if you're advanced enough, you can do it by yourself. Have the subject, okay, so basically choose a friend or family member for testing. We'll call him or her your subject. Have the subject stand erect, right arm relaxed at his side, left arm held out parallel in front of you to the floor, elbow straight. You may use the other arm if you wish. Face your subject and place your left hand on his or her right shoulder to steady them. Then place your right hand on the subject's extended arm just above the wrist. So like right here. Tell the subject you're going to try to push his arm down as he resists with all his strength, saying nothing, just a normal test to see basically you set the precedence for your strength. Now push down on his arm fairly quickly, firmly, and evenly. The idea is to push just hard enough to test the spring and the bounce in the arm, but not so hard that the muscle becomes fatigued. It is not a question of who is stronger, but of whether the muscle can lock the shoulder joint against the push. Assuming there is no physical problem with the muscle and the subject is in a normal relaxed state of mind, receiving no extraneous stimuli. For this reason, it is important that the tester not smile or otherwise interact with the subject. The muscle will test strong, the arm will remain locked. If the test is repeated in the presence of a negative stimulus, for instance, the artificial sweetener, although you are pushing down no harder than before, the muscle will not be able to resist the pressure, and the subject's arm will fall to their side. So, a striking aspect of Diamond's research was the uniformity of response among his subjects. Diamond's results were predictable, repeatable, and universal. This was so even where no rational link existed between stimulus and response. For totally undetermined reasons, certain abstract symbols caused all subjects to test weak, others the opposite. Some results were perplexing. Certain pictures with no overtly positive or negative content would cause all subjects to test weak, while other neutral pictures caused all subjects to test strong. And some results were food for consideration, surmise, whereas virtually all classical music and most pop music, including classic rock and roll, caused a universally strong response. The hard or metal rock that first gained popularity in the late 1970s, produced a universally weak response. There was one other phenomenon that Diamond noted in passing, though devoting no deeper analysis to its extraordinary implications. Subjects listening to tapes of known deceits, Lyndon Johnson perpetrating the Tonkin Gulf hoax, Edward Kennedy stonewalling the Chappaquiddick incident, universally tested weak, while listening to recordings of demonstrable true statements, they universally tested strong. This was the starting point of the work of the author of this volume, the well-known psychiatrist and physician David R. Hawkins. In 1975, Dr. Hawkins began research on the kinesiological response to truth and falsehood. It has been established that test subjects did not need any conscious acquaintance with the substance or issue being tested. In double-blind studies and in mass demonstrations involving entire lecture audiences, subjects universally tested weak in response to unmarked envelopes containing artificial sweetener and strong to identical envelopes containing placebo. So there was placebos in the other ones, and they tested strong. The same naive response appeared in testing intellectual values. What seems to be at work is a form of communal consciousness, spiritus mundi, as Hawkins called it. Following Jung, a database of consciousness, the phenomenon seen so commonly in other social animals, whereby a fish swimming at the edge of a school will turn instantaneously when its fellows a quarter mile away flee a predator, pertains in some subconscious way to our species as well. There are simply too many documented instances of individuals having intimate acquaintance with information experienced firsthand by remote strangers for us to deny that there are forms of shared knowledge other than those achieved by rational consciousness. Or perhaps more simply, the same spark of inner subrational wisdom that can discriminate healthy from unhealthy can discriminate truth from false. One highly suggestive element of this phenomenon is the binary nature of the response. Hawkins found that questions must be phrased so that the answer is very clearly yes or no, like a nerve synapse that is on or off, like the most basic cellular forms of knowledge, like so much of what our cutting-edge physicists tell us is the essential nature of universal energy. Is the human brain at some primal level a wondrous computer linked with the universal energy field that knows far more than it knows it knows? Be that as it may, Dr. Hawkins' research continued, his most fertile discovery was a means of calibrating a scale of relative truth by which intellectual positions, statements, or ideologies could be rated on a range of 1 to 1,000. One can say, this item, book, philosophy, teacher calibrates at 200, yes or no, at 250, yes or no, and so on, until the point of common weak response determines the calibration. The enormous implication of these calibrations was that, for the first time in human history, ideological validity could be appraised as an innate quality in any subject. Through 20 years of similar calibrations, Hawkins was able to analyze the full spectrum of the levels of human consciousness, developing a fascinating map of the geography of man's experience. This anatomy of consciousness produces a profile of the entire human condition, allowing a comprehensive analysis of the emotional and spiritual development of individuals, societies, and the race in general. So profound and far-reaching a view provides not only a new understanding of man's journey in the universe, but also a guide on the ladder of spiritual enlightenment, but also a guide to all of us as to where we and our neighbors are on the ladder of spiritual enlightenment, and on our own personal journeys to become who we could become and who we could be. In this volume, Dr. Hawkins brings these fruits of decades of research and insight into the penetrating illumination of revolutionary discoveries in advanced particle physics and nonlinear dynamics. For the first time in our Western intellectual record, he shows that the cold light of science is confirming what mystics and saints have always said about the self, God, and the very nature of reality. The vision of being, essence, and divinity presents a picture of man's relation to the universe that is unique in its capacity to satisfy both soul and reason. There is a rich intellectual and spiritual harvest here, much that you can take and much more that you can give yourself. Turn the page. The future starts now. And this was written by the editor, E. Whalen, from Bard Press in 1995. So, highly recommend this book. And I think it's high time I start reading it on my YouTube. I will start from scratch and start posting that. These are powerful times, and it's up to us to reclaim our personal power. More than anything, we need to stop being submissive, being dismissive, being irresponsible for the energy that we emit, attract, magnetize, because ultimately we are the creators of our reality. And if we keep on dismissing, submitting, then we only have ourselves to blame in the end. That if we want more, we want better, we ourselves have to start from within. Everything is an inside job. Nothing is new under the sun. And when you look around you, everything is a reflection of you. You've been here before. This isn't your first rodeo. It's actually kind of fun when you start to get back in the flow. I'm grateful for the experience having presented itself to me again, because as aggravating as it is, and also because I'm like, man, I'm just trying to get shit done, and I've got people trying to cause problems for me. I'm like, you know what? No, that's not my problem, and it doesn't belong to me. So you can have that back. Take it back to your own little space. And there's a certain point where if you feel you've been energetically zapped or attacked or any of that, someone's harboring ill will against you, don't own that. Don't tell that story. Reclaim your power. Call back your energy and put yourself up an energetic force field that says, I only allow what supports and uplifts me. That if someone is projecting or trying to inflict or impose themselves energetically, mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever, that just like the universe protects you because it is there listening to you, that it goes right back to that individual. Because what someone thinks they're doing to another is really bouncing back onto themselves. And also be very mindful and own your own stuff if you have done that to others. It doesn't mean you have to, like we've all been there. We've all been the good, we've all been the bad, and been the yin and the yang. The duality and the polarity is just showing us, okay, I gotta level this out. I gotta come back to my neutral self. I've got to come back to my truth. We're not here to shame or blame ourselves or anybody else. If anything, it's just like yes and no. complete sentences. You don't have to explain yourself. It was interesting having conversations with my girlfriend and another friend. I'm like, they go into a story and I catch that because I used to do it. I used to be already ready to defend myself. You know why? Because when you feel that you're constantly on the defense, that in itself is a trauma response. And I used to have that for a good portion of my life, always looking to defend, even when there was nothing to defend. And what does that do? It attracts the attack. So if you are someone who is constantly putting yourself in the position of, I feel like I need to have a story just in case, that in itself is drawing to you the attack of somebody. So when you do catch yourself telling, the story of, okay, this is what's going to happen. Like I caught myself in meditation a couple days, like a week ago. And I was like, I don't want to be that person. I'm not going to stoop to that level. I'm not going to draw that energy out of, you can get triggered and it can reignite your, let's just say your devil. Okay. Someone comes at you and you're like, fight fire with fire. Because I'm a fire sign. I'm like, no, the phoenix rising in me is over here going, I'm not taking it lying down, but I'm going to let you burn yourself down. You know why? Because I don't need to fight something that's not my battle. When someone attacks you, someone comes at you, what they're really doing is having their own internal battle and trying to hook you into it, trying to hijack you so they can justify their own stuff. And so the phoenix rising, my personal impression is energetic. You don't have to be the warrior from the fire having to burn anybody. If anything, you're rising from the ashes and the flames to demonstrate you don't need to fight because you can rise above it. Think about that. The rising above what was once a fight, because we've all been there. You don't need to go down into those depths anymore. And that's what I was reclaiming. It will, as far as I'm concerned, it's resolved. It's not even about empathy from the other person. I don't know. You might want to go back and watch the whole thing because you came in later, if I'm not mistaken. But essentially, this situation that was presented was a less than honorable situation. The person started out with intentions of taking advantage of a situation. It was very clear from the languaging. I didn't recognize it at first. And so therefore, I am over here having to rise above it and not get sucked into it. So whenever you find yourself in a situation where you feel like someone's trying to drag you in hook, line, and sinker, pull you into their trauma, rise above it. Find your neutrality. Don't go jumping in with the old fire. See, this is the clearing of karma. That's what the phoenix is about, rising and burning out the karma. No longer going back to old patterns or behaviors. Because I can tell you that part of my old pattern might have been like, okay, you're going to fight fire? I'm going to come back with fire. You're going to talk like that to me? I'm going to hit you back with it. No. Why would I stoop to that level and just basically feed it? No, thank you. I see it for what it is. It's a lesson to overcome, not to submit, to stand in my personal power. This is a situation where someone's trying to force and impose, and all I have to do is let them implode because they're doing a good job on their own. I don't have to explain myself or prove myself because it's all out there to see. And that is the reality of the world we live in. That when you get caught up in telling a story or defending yourself, you're attracting the attack. A lot of us have grown up in that trauma response, feeling the need to defend ourselves. You don't. 9 times out of 10, you have no obligation to defend or explain yourself to people. He calls up someone and they show up at my house. I will ask questions. You know what? The person who asks the most questions is the one who has control of the situation. I'm sorry, what are you here for? Can you tell me more? What do you need? I don't have to submit it. I don't have to do it. And actually, the last time I had a code enforcer come by a couple of years ago when my friend had their RV in the driveway and my neighbor didn't like it, but she proceeded to act like she She proceeded to try to make it sound like she felt unsafe because of his RV. And I'm like, we're both veterans. You should feel safe. But she didn't want to hear it. She called code and code came by. And anyway, the guy actually said to me, you don't have to tell me it. You know, he was straight up with me. He's like, I know you don't have to show me. You don't have to do anything, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, cool. So you just got to be smarter and don't let other people drag you into things that aren't your stuff to be dragged into. As they say, choose your battle or choose your peace. And most people don't realize they're choosing a battle when it's not necessary. The battle is within. And I feel pretty content within. I'm choosing my peace. So with that said, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. This was a little longer than I thought, and I'm going to go take a walk. It's sunset. Can you see the sun on me? Again, I am here to uplift, support, inspire, and empower from a place of, this is me. This is all I know. And if that inspires you to be the better version of you, then I've done my job. I have served my purpose. Make sure you click the notification bell. Sharing is caring. Subscribe, notifications. Be so kind. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Hold on a minute. Now I'm trying to hang up.